Hi, it's David and welcome to your lesson on times tables. This is going to be the most important lesson out of all of them.
The most important one of all! The most important one of all!
Times table knowledge feeds into about 80% of the national curriculum for maths for primary schools, and I'm not kidding. Those children that are really good at their times tables do really well at maths, and those that struggle to do their times tables really struggle at maths. So if the only thing you do over the next few weeks while the schools are closed is to learn the times tables in the techniques that I'm going to give you in this lesson, then you've put yourself in a very, very strong position to be brilliant at maths when you go back to school. You need an excellent knowledge of times tables for pretty much everything on the primary curriculum. For example, adding, subtracting, multiplying, obviously, dividing, fractions, decimals, percentages, length, weight, capacity, time, ratio, proportion, money, problem solving, area, perimeter, geometry, shape, angles, bar graphs, pie charts, line graphs, a giant comedy hand. Pretty much everything. So it's one thing to say, yeah, okay, my times tables are important, but how do you learn them? Well, I'm going to give you some hints and tips now. Tips? No, but I will give you some tips about how to learn them very, very effectively. The first thing you need to be able to do is count very fluently in those numbers. So if I'm learning my 3 times table, I learn how to count fluently in my 3s. 3, 6, 9, 12, and so on. Forwards and backwards. So like come back from 30, 30, 27, 24, 21, 18. You could also use the Metronome Game like we saw in the previous lesson on number bonds, and that's a good fun way of getting more fluent with your counting, like this. 3, 6, 9, and you can go faster. 3, 6, 9, you can go backwards. 30, 27, 24, you can go backwards really fast. No. Never mind. Also use the apparatus that you've got at your disposal, so visualize it too. So lay out some cubes in groups of 3 and look at them as you count them. The more senses you use to learn something, the more you're going to remember it. So don't be frightened to look at something and touch something as well as say or hear something, and you're going to learn it much better. So once you've practiced counting fluently in your times tables forwards and backwards, it's going to be worth getting a poster or something like that. Put something on the wall. Some of my students used to have their times tables going down their stairs, so they saw them every day. Just kind of surround yourself with the times tables so that you see them all the time and you get very, very familiar with them. There's some brilliant resources out now, especially now schools are closed. Some companies are being fantastic and offering things for free. Just like me. Take advantage of that. Twinkle, for instance, is a brilliant primary resource which you subscribe to at schools, and it's free at the moment for people while they're at home. And they've got all these amazing resources like word searches and worksheets, but they've got really good times tables posters as well, so get onto that and kind of download some of those. It's a fantastic resource. Something else you should do is write down your times tables, and at the end of this tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to make a times table kind of concertina grid like this. But just the act of writing down your times tables is going to help you to learn them even better, and then you've got a record of it so you can look at it and you can learn them. The final thing is to learn them properly, so don't just count them but say them as a whole sentence. For example, 1 times 3 is 3, 2 times 3 is 6, 3 times 3 is 9, 4 times 3 is 12. Because if you remember them as a sentence, then you know the answer. So definitely say them as a sentence so you know how the question is associated with the answer. It becomes so important later on, like year 5, 6, when you're doing fractions. If you're simplifying something like, 9 over 12, then you recognise that 9 and 12 are in the 3 times table, so you can divide top and bottom by 3 and you can get the answer 3/4. So you really, really, really need to commit them to memory. Once you've counted them and you've got them on your wall so you can see them, once you've written them out, and once you've practiced saying them as a sentence, you're then going to need to practice them all of the time. So this lesson isn't just for this lesson. This lesson is for the next however many years you're at primary school for. If you're in year 1, this lesson is appropriate for the next 6 years. This is something you should be doing every day. And make it as fun for yourself as possible. So there's all sorts of ways that you can do that. There's some brilliant online games, for example. Try out Mathletics. There's a brilliant online section of that, a live section where you can challenge people from around the world on your times tables. You can literally play against someone in China and see if you can beat them at your times table speed. Times Table Rockstars is another really, really fantastic resource out at the moment, and it's free while all the schools are closed. So make the most of that. They've got brilliant games and songs and all sorts of great things to help you to remember your times tables. In addition to that, you can make yourself a times table grid. My class used to love doing this. So for instance, get yourself some square paper and do a 10 by 10 grid. 12 by 12 is even better if you want to challenge yourself all the way up to 12 times 12. But you make yourself a grid and you write down your random numbers along the top, say from 1 to 10 or 1 to 12, and then random numbers down the side from 1 to 10 or 1 to 12. And then you draw a grid and then you time yourself and you see how quickly you can complete the grid. And you should be able to do it in less than 10 minutes. If it's taking you more than 10 minutes and you don't know them well enough and you need to be practicing them even more. And again, that's something you can do every day, and you can challenge yourself and you can really have a go, see if you can beat your time, and it starts to become really, really good fun, and you really start to feel a sense of pride when you see the improvements that you're making. Another thing you need to realise is it's a lot easier than you think. You don't have as many to learn as you think you do. So you might think you've got all of these times tables to learn. You might think that you're going to need to learn 144 times tables. But you don't. Because if you think about it, half of them repeat. 6 times 7 is the same as 7 times 6. So once you know that 6 times 7 is 42, you also know that 7 times 6 is 42. So you can eliminate half of them. You only need to learn 72. And some of them are really easy. So you can get rid of all of the 1s, get rid of all of the 10s, the 2s, probably the 5s as well. And you're only left with a very small number of times tables you actually need to commit to memory. So my next tip is a way of really helping you to narrow down the ones that you don't know to make it easier to learn. So make yourself some flashcards, get yourself some rectangular bits of paper, square bits of paper, whatever. Write the question on one side and the answer on the back. Then stick them in an envelope to learn. Okay, there we go. And then test yourself, pick them out at random, and we pick up a question like 3 times 3. If I know that's 9 straight away, then I put that in my other envelope for the ones that I know. Okay. If I test myself on a question and I don't know the answer, 4 times 3, and I'm struggling to think of that one, then that goes back in the envelope to learn. Then after a while, you end up with a whole load of them in here that you already know and you can ignore. And then you just need to focus on the few that you don't know, and it becomes so much easier to learn because it's not quite so overwhelming. There's just a few to learn, a few to focus on. So definitely have a go at learning on times tables with flashcards. Parents, if you're watching this, you should know that it's a national curriculum requirement that your children know their times tables by the end of year 4. So if your child is in year 5 or 6 and you ask them a times table question like 7 times 8 and they don't answer straight away, in other words, they don't know it, they've got to work it out, then they do not know their times tables well enough and they've got to work harder to learn them. Just so you know the breakdown of it, by the end of year 2, you need to know your 2, 5 and 10 times table. By the end of year 3, you need to add to that your 3, 4s and 8s. And by the end of year 4, you need to know all of them up to 12 times 12. And if you don't, you're going to be falling behind. I'm going to challenge you now with some things to do. You haven't had a lot to learn in terms of learning new material. This lesson has all been about encouraging you to do the most important thing of all, which is learning your times tables. And I can't do that for you, only you can do that. So here's what you need to do. Number 1, write out all of your times tables, the ones that are relevant to your year group. So if you're in year 2, your 2s, 5s and 10s. If you're year 3, your 3s, 8s and 4s. And if you're in year 4, all of your times tables. Number 2, practice saying all of your times tables in a full sentence, like 1 times 3 is 3, 2 times 3 is 6. Step number 3, learn your times tables using the flashcard idea so you can eliminate the ones that you already know and just focus on the ones that you don't know. Step number 4, practice them in all sorts of fun ways to get yourself motivated and doing it every day, like the online games we mentioned, Mathletics or Times Table Rockstars, or create a times table grid every day and challenge yourself so you can get faster and faster at it, or learning the flashcards, of course. So that's it from me from this lesson. For the last part of this tutorial, I'm just going to be showing you how to make one of these concertina cards if you're interested, but also at the end, I'm going to show you how to make a times table grid on the computer. That is well worth watching. It'll teach you a lot about Excel, as well as it will show you how to create a times table format that you can just print out every day and you won't have to draw it every time, and it's a much quicker way of doing it. I'm also going to show you how to get the computer to work out the answers for you as well. So that's well worth checking out. So have fun with those, and I look forward to seeing you at the next lesson.